Welcome to episode 5 of Leaders in Next. Dan and I are your hosts, and we're proud alumni of the University of Michigan and passionate supporters of the university, the athletics program, and the student athletes. We created Leaders in Next with a goal to be a different type of podcast. Instead of focusing on X's and O's, we want to highlight the whole student athlete, exploring their journey to Michigan and better understanding who they are not only on, but off the field. Please visit our website at www.leadersinnext.com for more information and follow us on Instagram. Today's episode is sponsored by American Built USA. American Built is a really cool veteran-owned company. Every aspect of the apparel they create takes place in the United States. Not only is it manufactured in America, but the raw materials are gathered in America as well. The cotton for American Built clothing comes from the southern United States. It's manufactured in California and then shipped to their headquarters in Pocatello, Idaho. And they have worked with our guest tonight, Andrew Gentry, to create a special Michigan shirt. Please visit their website at AmericanBuiltUSA.com and search for Andrew's collection and help support both American Built and Andrew. Anyone who follows college football knows that Michigan has had one of the best offensive lines in college football. In fact, Michigan won the Joe Moore Award in 2021 and 2022, making it the first team ever to win back-to-back awards, and one of only 2 teams to win twice since the award started in 2015. The Joe Moore Award annually recognizes the nation's most outstanding offensive line unit that best displays toughness, effort, teamwork, consistency, technique, and finishing. The voting committee is comprised of college football experts, especially people who played or coached the offensive line position, including all of the current offensive line coaches at the Division I FBS level, as well as former players, coaches, colleagues of Coach Moore, and select media. This success has translated into the NFL. Michigan has more offensive linemen on NFL rosters than any other college program. Today, we're excited to have a member of that award-winning offensive line, Andrew Gentry, big number 75, join our podcast. Andrew graduated from Columbine High School in 2020, where he was a 4-year varsity starter with a record of 45-7. His play earned him a 4-star rating on all the various rating firms, and depending on which firm you go by, he was one of the highest rating offensive tackles coming out of high school and was the number 1 player in the state of Colorado and a Max Preps first team All-American. Andrew is entering his 3rd year at U of M as a 2-time letterman and is a redshirt sophomore. And he's an academic All-Big Ten honoree. Andrew, welcome to the Leaders in Next podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's an honor to be talking to a member of that offensive line because it's been such a critical part of our success at Michigan. When we're talking to people, we always like to go kind of back to their youth. Doing a little research on your family, it's a pretty athletic family.
Yeah, a little bit.
Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll take it way back. So my grandpa, he played offensive line. This is kind of where it all started for me, right? He played offensive line at BYU in the 1950s. He was a first-team all-conference offensive lineman back in the day in the 50s. And so that's kind of where I got my O-line roots from. Because on my dad's side of the family, my dad was a basketball player. So he played basketball at both BYU and Utah State, so at the collegiate level. Then my mom's brother, so my uncle, played football at BYU in the 90s. My brother played football at BYU back in 2018 would have been his first year, so 2018 to 2022. And then I fit in right there, and then I got a younger sister who's going to go play basketball at Creighton starting up in just 2 weeks. So in terms of athletics, yeah, you can say it's been an important part of our family for generations at this point.
Now, I did a little research. Your dad, I think at BYU, was listed on the roster as 6'5", 170 pounds.
Sounds about right.
You're almost double the weight class of your father. How did genetically did it pass? Like, was his dad a bigger guy, or how'd you get that big?
Yeah, so I mean, his dad was a little bit of a bigger guy, but like I said, it mostly came from my grandpa's side. So my mom, her dad, was the All-American football player at BYU, and so you get the girth from that side, is what we always said, and then you got the length from my dad's side. So I got the height from him, and then the offensive line from my grandpa. So that's how I got to be, almost double my dad's weight when he was in college.
Now, you mentioned your sister playing basketball. I saw a tweet that your dad put out in 2022 where he was working on a drill, and he said something about, working on getting her to be able to dunk the ball.
Yep.
Now I'm just curious. Any status report? Is she able to dunk?
She can dunk. Yeah. So I mean,
Whoa.
it's she
Wow.
can, yeah. Which for a high school girl is pretty incredible. So she's a really good athlete. I don't know where the athleticism went. It didn't go to me and my brother. I guess we got the bigger side, and she got all the athleticism of the family. But she can. So great athlete, and she's going to do awesome at Creighton starting up here soon.
I'm not sure how far back you have to go in our family tree to find a dunker, but I'm going to guess it's quite a few generations.
Yeah, Dan, I don't think there is one.
Maybe some guy who got off the Mayflower could probably throw down.
Certainly neither one of us. And so just for those listening along, your sister's first name is Liz, right? Elizabeth?
Elizabeth goes by Liz. Yep.
So folks, look her up. Liz Gentry at Creighton, basketball player. Could be the next Caitlin Clark. You never know.
That's what we're hoping for.
So was at holidays or get-togethers, was this a pretty competitive family in terms of playing games?
Yeah, 100%. So my brother and I, we're 4 years apart. He's 4 years older than me. So obviously, growing up, pretty big age gap in terms of being able to compete at the same level and different things like that. But I just grew up loving sports, and I wanted to do whatever he did. And so he started playing football, and I begged my parents to let me play football. And one of the things I'm really grateful for is that my brother always let me hang out with him and his friends and let me compete, and they wouldn't take it easy on me. And so I just remember distinctly being, a little 8-year-old and then playing against the 12-year-olds. And then when my brother got to high school, being 11 years old, and he and all his 15-year-old friends were playing pretty fast paced. And, for me, I just thought, well, I should be able to play at this fast pace and stuff, and getting frustrated, getting my shot blocked a lot and different things like that. But, taught me to play a little bit faster and be a little bit stronger and be a little bit tougher because, it was always really competitive, and somebody would usually end up on the ground. Generally it'd be me. But if I wanted to keep hanging out with them, couldn't stay down on the ground or do that. So kept it really competitive. And then, with my sister, kind of she followed suit. And when she started playing basketball, I'd make sure and, give her some drills on the inside and stuff, made her a lot tougher and whatnot. And then, like you said, going in the holidays too, and you get board game comes out, then, family relationships can get severed pretty quick if you're playing in our family. But no, we all love each other. We're all super close. But we obviously love to compete as well. Been a big part of our family for a long time.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, we know you're focused on football now, but it sounds like you played some basketball. How long did you play basketball? Were you able to play both sports in high school, or did you have to specialize at some point just in football, given all the camps and stuff that requires?
Yeah, so I actually started playing basketball way before I even started playing football. The first ball my dad ever put in our hands, he was a basketball player, wasn't basketball. Yeah. And so from a young age, we were out on the court playing basketball all the time. We have a basketball court in our backyard. So we were out there shooting every day. And so I loved basketball growing up, obviously pretty tall too. So it bode well. It was good for me, playing in high school and whatnot, in middle school. And then I got to high school. And I got to high school, I was 6'6", 265 as a freshman. So I was taller than most high schoolers, but also really big. And I remember that summer I played really well in basketball. And then that football season, had a really good football season for a freshman, and didn't really touch a basketball too much. And then I remember getting into the basketball season for the first time, being pretty heavy. And then all of a sudden you get into varsity conditioning and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's a lot of weight to be carrying up and down the floor. And then I played my sophomore year, but I bumped up to 305. I put on 40 pounds between freshman and sophomore year. So I was playing at 305. And I remember trying to play basketball at 305. And I was still a good basketball player, but just running was killing me. And I lost like 20 pounds that basketball season. And so at that point I was like, all right, I really got to decide, do I want to really push it in football and push myself to be an All-American and get to that weight where I can, stay at a really high level, competitive level, and go to whatever school I want to? or do I keep playing basketball and having to lose weight and put on weight and lose strength and put on strength? And so at that point, I realized that football was going to be my ticket. I wasn't going to be a basketball player. So put my time and energy into football at that point. Now stop playing basketball.
There's probably a lot of guys on the team that played basketball. And do you guys, the coaches ever let you guys go over to the IM building and play pickup basketball?
They're not fans of us going over to the IM and playing too much. They don't want us going over there and, doing something stupid playing against other college kids.
Right.
We got, I don't know if you've been into Schembeckler Hall, but there's a little basketball court above the weight room. And so I've been in there and shot around with some guys and whatnot. And there's some great players on the team. So, if it comes to it one day, maybe some pickup will be played. I would love to.
We can come back to this later. I think we can ask this at the end, but I am really curious. And we'll get to this, but who your top 5 starting lineup would be, just picking guys from the team currently.
Okay.
We can definitely come back to that later. A little bit of a tangent from your growing up history, but given your basketball background, I'm really curious. There's been a recent online debate, I guess, got started on SportsCenter, and it revolves around what's harder, going from the NBA to the NFL or going from the NFL to the NBA. And it got started because I think it was Austin Rivers who said there were like 30 guys in the NBA right now that could make an NFL roster or something like that. So which by the way, I think is crazy, but I am curious what you think. What's harder, going from the NFL to the NBA or the NBA to the NFL? What's your take?
Yeah, I think 30 is a hot take for sure. I don't think there's 30. But I would say, in my opinion, I think it probably is easier for an NBA player to transition to the NFL than it would be vice versa. In my opinion, I just think basketball is such a skilled game. I mean, if you don't have a jump shot and you don't practice that jump shot every day, it's really hard to all of a sudden come to professional level. Whereas football, I mean, you can kind of work at it and pick up some of the techniques, especially if you're playing a less technical position and whatnot. I think it's a little bit easier for a guy who's just a freak athlete that's playing in the NBA to kind of figure that stuff out. But I don't know. I mean, both are going to be hard to transition, but if I had to take a side, that's my side.
I definitely think that you're right. I agree with you. I don't know, Dad, what do you think? What's your take?
I think they're both hard, and but I do think basketball crossing over to football. I can see guys playing, receiver, tight end, maybe a defensive back, depending on, I think both require such skill and ability that 30 seems like a really high number. I would put it at like 10.
I don't know. You see a guy like Zion Williamson and you put 20 pounds on him and get him in the weight room a little bit and put him on the edge. That's a scary dude coming off the edge there with his twitch and how athletic he is.
I guess you could just sign Victor Wembanyama and have him block every single kick.
I mean,
yeah, like that would be worth one of 53 roster spots. You'd never have a kick kicked against you. Totally worth it.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, he takes one shot to the chest, though. I don't know if he's staying out.
Yeah.
He's done. So, was there a moment in high school when, or maybe it was even earlier, you came to the realization, you know what, I'm pretty good at this football thing. I think I can play be successful. I mean, obviously your brother did, so you had that kind of, you saw that, and your father did clearly, and a lot of people in your family did. But how young were you when you said, you know what, I'm going to be good at this?
From the time that I can remember, it was always my goal to play college football. Like I mentioned, my uncle played football at BYU in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so when I was a really little kid, I remember my uncle gave us the copy of the NCAA 02, EA Sports NCAA 02, where he was, strong safety number 43, kind of get into the new version of the NCAA game coming out, which is funny to see. But so I remember watching that and seeing him, and I'm like, dang, I'm going to do that. That's what I want to do. And so that was always my goal. And then I think when I realized, I'm pretty good at football, this could actually be, not just a dream, because I think there's a lot of little kids' dreams to do that. I honestly think towards the end of middle school and then starting into high school, like I said, I was in the 8th grade, I was 6'4", 240. And I was like, God had given me these good gifts, and I was going to continue to grow. Yeah. And I was like, I feel like it'd be kind of a waste if I didn't go to the NCAA level to play college football at that point. And so that's when I kind of realized, if I work hard enough, I really think I could go to the next level. And then freshman year really cemented that I was going to, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned a few really critical family members, like your both grandfathers, your father and brother, that were just really instrumental in shaping you as an athlete and early in your life. Any other people that were really key in terms of mentors or role models that you had that not only helped you find football, but also stick with it and take it to the college level at Michigan?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, 100% my family, like the people I've already mentioned. Those were the core foundational pieces that really propelled me and my love of football. If it weren't for them, I don't think I would have loved the game as much as I do now, or had the desire to really keep going. But because of that foundation that they instilled, it was I think I was destined to do it in a way, right? Mm-hmm. But outside of my family, there was a guy by the name of Ryan Miller who came out of Columbine High School, graduated in 2006. He was an All-American. He was the only All-American at Columbine that Columbine had ever had, the only 5-star recruit to ever come out of the state of Colorado. I think he still is. And he got drafted by the Browns, I want to say when I was maybe 4th or 5th grade. And I remember seeing that and I was like, okay, that's a kid that I've kind of seen. I watched him play at University of Colorado. And I was like, he's from my hometown. If he can do it, then I could do it too. And so I kind of looked up to him. He, didn't know who I was, but I saw that, and my coaches would always talk about him and the things that he would do. And so for me, that gave me hope, right? That there's a kid from my high school, kid from my hometown that could go and be really good. So, why can't I do it too? And so I looked up to him a lot too, for sure.
Wow. It's really hard to believe that there's only been one 5-star recruit out of the state of Colorado, but even still, you were still really highly recruited. You were the number 1 player in the state coming out of high school your senior year. You had offers from Michigan, obviously, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, but you chose initially to commit to Virginia. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so as you guys already know, but as the listeners probably don't know, so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so something that I had decided even before I was going to play college football is something that majority of all young men do in our church, which is you take 2 years and you serve a mission, right? Where your whole time, all your efforts, all your energy is put into helping people and really preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that's what I knew I was going to do coming out of high school. Mm-hmm. And so obviously you can imagine when you have conversations with coaches at Alabama, Notre Dame, all these different schools, they're a little bit hesitant that you're going to say, well, for 2 years, I only get 30 minutes a day to work out. I don't even have a gym by me. I could be anywhere in the world. And, I can't talk to you guys. I can't do anything. So I'm going to come back out of shape. And so there's a lot of people really hesitant about, well, you're going to have to develop when you get back, and we don't know how you're going to be when you get back, yada, yada. Right. And so for me, I really needed it. And I really wanted to find a coach that was super supportive of the mission and willing to put together a plan to help me get back from my mission and be a really good college football player. And a lot of coaches were. Coach Harbaugh and the old staff, it would have been back in 2019 that I was making this decision. They were very supportive and excited about it and were really willing to help me. But at the time, Bronco Mendenhall, who had been the coach at BYU for years, was the coach at Virginia. I also really wanted to play Power 5 football. And at that time, Virginia was actually on the rise. They had played in the Orange Bowl that year and were really, kind of on the up and up at that point. And I just kind of looked at that and said, okay, well, there's this coach who is a member of my faith, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ. He understands that I'm going on a mission. He knows how to work with missionaries because he worked with hundreds of missionaries at BYU. And so to me, that just kind of seemed like the most logical choice, that I could go there. They would know how to work with me as a missionary. And then I could still compete at a high level is what, I kind of thought coming out of high school, and why I ultimately chose to attend the University of Virginia, or commit to the University of Virginia at that point.
And now, so Bronco Mendenhall's no longer the coach at Virginia. So obviously that happened during your recruitment. So kind of at that point, my guess is everything changed. So tell us about your recruiting journey, once Coach Mendenhall left Virginia.
Yeah, so this is where the story kind of gets a little interesting and a little crazy in my personal story. So I finished high school, right? Graduated from high school, commit to Virginia, signed with Virginia. And then I graduate in May of 2020. And then literally 2 weeks later is when I start my missionary service. Now, also, if you remember, during May of 2020, there was a worldwide pandemic going on, and the whole world had shut down. So I was actually originally supposed to go to Salta, Argentina to serve my mission. I was going to go down to South America and be down there for 2 years. But because of the pandemic, Argentina completely shut down their borders, and I couldn't get a visa, obviously, to go into their country. So my assignment changed to Orem, Utah, which you don't usually envision missionaries going to Utah, but that's where I ended up, and I loved it. Funny side note, my dad grew up in Orem, Utah, so I'd been there all the time. I knew it very well, so it's kind of a funny place to get assigned to be a missionary. Completely random still, but I loved it. So anyway, so I started my mission in Orem, and I served there for 18 months, and I'm still planning on going to Virginia when I get back. And then in December of 2021, I get news that Bronco Mendenhall just decided to step away from coaching football. And as missionaries, we don't have access to social media. We don't have access to the news. We don't have access to the outside world, really. Yeah. And so I heard it from somebody who knew that I was going to go play football at Virginia. And so they tell me this, and you can imagine not having access to those things. Your mind kind of starts to spin a little bit. We can only communicate with our families once a week. So I couldn't even talk to my parents and see what was going on. And so I think that happened on a Wednesday or Thursday. And so you can imagine we can talk to our families on Mondays. And so for those 4 days, it was a pretty stressful 4 days, not knowing where I was going to go to school, because I kind of knew I didn't want to go to Virginia anymore if he wasn't going to be there. And it kind of started going, having a rough couple years. And so I knew I wanted to switch my decision, but not really knowing where I could go and different things like that. And then was able to talk to my family that following Monday. And so when that happened, my family knew that I was probably going to be my decision, because I told them that if that were to happen, I would open my recruiting again. And so my dad, my parents, they're awesome, both my mom and my dad. And they took the initiative and they said, okay, well, I don't think Andrew's going to go here. Let's call a couple coaches. And the first person they said we need to call right away is Coach Harbaugh. And so my dad called Coach Harbaugh. Coach Harbaugh picked up on the second ring, remembered exactly who my dad was, remembered exactly who I was, which just speaks to the type of coach that he is, that he remembered some recruit that didn't even commit to him from 2 years prior. And so picked up right away and asked how I was doing. And my dad said, well, actually, and explained the situation of Virginia. And right at that moment, Coach Harbaugh said, where is he? I want to go see him. We want him at Michigan. My dad said, well, hold on just a second. He's a missionary right now. You can't really just go see him. Right. And so, but gave me the information. Coach Harbaugh said I would have a scholarship if I wanted to come to Michigan. And then obviously, my brother was playing at BYU at the time. And so they had reached out as well. And so those are the only two schools that I even reached out to at that point. And I felt, very strongly right away that I wanted to go to Michigan. Talked to my family and felt that was where I was going to go. And then while you're serving a mission, you have what's called a mission president. So missions, like I said, my mission was centered in Orem, Utah. There's over 200 missions around the entire world, and each one has a mission president who kind of oversees the mission and all the young missionaries within that mission. And he kind of gives the rules and whatnot. And my mission president at that time, usually it would be a huge no to have anybody come and visit the mission and see you as a missionary. But my mission president was awesome and said, this is a really important decision, and you need to meet with these coaches and see this coach, specifically Coach Harbaugh, before you make this decision. And so Coach Harbaugh was able to get permission. We had to go to some of the higher officials in our church to get permission, because this was the very first time in the history of our church that a missionary was going to be meeting with a coach, a college football coach, while serving as a mission. And so to people, to people listening, may seem kind of weird that there's all these rules, but it really was a completely different situation. And he got permission, came out, we had lunch for 45 minutes. And I knew after talking to him and how awesome he was, that's where I wanted to go, and shook his hand right there and said, come into Michigan. And that day, committed. About a week later, got my national letter of intent signed, and the rest is history.
Now, Coach Moore, was he the offensive line coach at the time, or had you met him yet through the recruitment?
Yeah, so I had met Coach Moore when he was the tight ends coach, when I was getting recruited. And then, like you said, he was the offensive line coach at that time. And so he actually came out right before Harbaugh. They allowed him to come out too, right before Coach Harbaugh came out. So I met him, but even shorter. It was like 15 minutes. We met at one of our church buildings in Lehi, Utah. Most people probably know where that is, just in central Utah, northern Utah. And met with him there for 15 minutes. And Sean knew at the time as well, who's also a member of my faith. So Sean was kind of helping be the liaison with this too, because he understood how missions worked and had gone to BYU. And so he also kind of helped with that. So met with Coach Nua, Coach Moore, got to talk to them, and then officially committed with Coach Harbaugh later that day. So a really crazy day, it was kind of a long-winded explanation of how that happened, but a very different recruiting process for most people. And something that I'm very grateful for, though. I look back and really feel like God had a hand in directing me to go to Michigan the way he did, and the way how everything worked out the way it did. And I'm really grateful for it.
Well, and we're going to touch on this a little later on to understand how you kind of came back from it. But did Harbaugh even recognize you at that lunch? Because by now you've lost like 40 or 50 pounds. And did he walk in and say, "Wait a minute, who are you?"
I mean, I'm sure those thoughts were going through his head, right? I mean, in terms of missionaries, I was the only one that was 6'8" and looked like I could play football. So I think he recognized me, hopefully. But no, I definitely was. I was worried about that for sure, that he was going to look at me and be like, "Oh man, you don't pass the eye test anymore." I was like, "I promise I do, Coach. I can." But yeah, I was pretty small at that point, relatively, for an offensive lineman.
I just want to go back to something you said earlier, because it's really unique and I think super interesting, which is that in your recruitment process, your father actually handled quite a lot of it and played a key role while you were on your mission. Sounds like he was really involved in talking with coaches, including Coach Harbaugh. But I'm just curious how that worked, because it sounds like he was really critical, because he had to relay information between the schools and the coaches and yourself. And it sounds like that communication could only happen maybe once a week. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the role your father played.
Yeah. So my dad's awesome. Ever since I started getting recruited, my freshman year of high school, he was right along there with me, because, it's a tough decision to make for a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, right? And so he was always there helping guide me. And so we had kind of gone through this together, and my mom as well. She was just as involved as my dad was as well. My dad kind of was the front man, right, of talking to all that stuff. But yeah, so he would really talk on my behalf and say, this is where Andrew is. He would always say, "I'm not going to make this decision for Andrew, but give me the information of where you're at right now." Because I'll be honest with you, I had no idea that Michigan was in the college football playoff back in 2021 when this was happening. You could have told me that Michigan was 0-12 or 12-0, and I would have had no idea. And another like 11-1 at the time, I believe. And I had no idea that they completely turned that season around or anything like that. And so my dad kind of gave me all that information on that Monday. So that just shows you how separated we were from the world. And I was like, "Well, is Stanford up there too?" Because I remember I had looked at Stanford too, and I asked him, like, "No, Stanford's not ranked as high as they were anymore." That's how I was. I thought that Michigan and Stanford were still, competing at the same level at that time. And so he kind of had handled all that information, gave me all that information, and then let me make that decision. So he wasn't, there and saying, "This is what Andrew wants," or "This is that." He was there just to say, "Give me the information. I'm going to relay it to Andrew, so he's not getting bombarded by, 20 different schools all at once."
I mean, that's probably nice to have that buffer, quite honestly. Now, given that you were going to go to Argentina and Virginia the first time around, distance from home doesn't seem to be an issue to you. I looked at this a long time ago, and a very high percentage of the highly rated folks coming out of high school like yourself stayed either in state or very close to home, like a short car ride from home. And presumably because they had Power 5 options that met that criteria, but also their parents could come drive and visit. Was distance, when you looked at your college stuff, was distance any kind of concern of yours from home?
No, it really wasn't. Like you mentioned, I was going to be in a completely different hemisphere for 2 years, and with the option to only call my parents once a week. And so for me, I was like, it'll be a piece of cake when I can go home and be in the same country as them. And then obviously ended up in Utah, so quick, 7-hour car trip away. But still, you're so shielded from everything. You only talk once a week that the distance didn't really ever bother me too much, and still hasn't bothered me being at Michigan and away from home.
Well, if we host any recruits from the state of Colorado in the future, and they want to talk to somebody from Colorado, I think there's only 2 of you on the roster, right? You and Connor Jones, I think, are the only 2 Colorado guys on the roster these days, unless I missed somebody.
Yeah, there were a lot last year, and then lost a few.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get a couple more coming in.
Yeah. Now we, through our crack research, we looked at a lot of videotape on you, and obviously a lot of pancake blocks, which is awesome. But we did see something missing in your skill set relative to others that we've talked to, and that is you've never thrown or caught a touchdown pass.
Correct.
Now, our prior guest, we had Max Bredesen and Zach Marshall, and they have both thrown. Now, Max, it's fair. I guess it's unfair because Max actually played quarterback in high school, but Zach didn't. But they both threw touchdowns. But we're wondering if you're not going to throw one, which seems really unlikely at this point. How are your hands? Could we get you as a tackle eligible?
Oh, for sure. I think I got the best hands on the O-line. I don't know if every O-lineman would agree with me on that, but we play offensive line 7-on-7. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before.
Yep. Yeah.
So offensive line 7-on-7 every Friday before games. And I was the second one off the board this last year when we did the draft. And so they know I'm a pretty sure-handed guy. I can catch some routes and I can run some routes. So if there's a tackle eligible, I would hope that I'd be up there on the top.
Wait, did you just say that there was a draft for the pregame offensive lineman 7-on-7 drill? Because if so, that is awesome.
There sure was. Yep.
Now at 6'8", as tackle eligible, that would be a hell of a mismatch. I see a goal line play here. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Dan, we may have to get with Coach Moore and lobby for this. I mean, because if those listening that are in the Detroit area or Detroit Lions fans, I mean, the Lions have really, if you get drafted by the Lions, the hometown team, I mean, they're thrown to Dan Skipper, they've thrown to Penny Sewell. Hell, they had Penny in motion and then threw to him. But we were talking earlier, and you told me about one of your highlight reel plays. You have a pick 6, though.
Yep.
In your repertoire. So I doubt there's any video of this on the internet. I don't know when it took place, though.
Yeah, so it was 5th grade, and believe it or not, there is video on the internet if you look hard enough.
We're going to have to find this.
Yeah,
I mean, 5th grade, you were, let me guess, you were like probably over 200 pounds in 5th grade? I don't know, but,
Quite close, something like that. I don't remember at this point, but something like that.
And walk us through this play. Was it, how long, was it a short pick 6, or did you have to run a long way?
Yeah, I mean, for a 5th grader, it was like 30 yards. So it wasn't super long, but it wasn't a goal line play either.
Nice.
Probably one of the athletic highlights of my entire career for sure. But it was.
You hurdle? Like, if you tell us that you hurdled some kid, this is going to make our day. Did you?
I didn't hurdle anyone, but it was one-handed. It was a one-handed pick 6.
Oh.
It was. So 5th grade, and actually the quarterback of the other team ended up being one of my really good friends in middle school. Didn't know him at the time, but they had run this screen against us. They had actually beaten us earlier that year. I still remember, 5th grade a long time ago, but they had beaten us earlier in that year by like 2 or 3 touchdowns, beat us pretty good. And they had killed us on this screen, just this screen pass over and over again. And so I remember going into that week, like our coaches had told us, like, if the offensive line doesn't block you, like something's not right, go find the ball and, try to make a stop, right? Said that in 5th grade terms. But so I remember I didn't get blocked, and I was like, this isn't right. And I remember I kind of dropped back a little bit and saw the ball coming my way, and one-handed with the right hand, picked it off, went straight to the end zone and scored. It was a championship game, 5th grade too. And so, like I said, I think it may be one of the best highlights of my career still.
That's it's a heck of a highlight. I mean,
for sure. No, definitely on the career highlight film, no doubt.
I wanted to go back to something you said when we were talking about your recruiting journey to Michigan. You said that at one point you had lost 40 pounds, and Harbaugh saw you and was joking, didn't know if you were in playing shape. But all jokes aside, that's obviously pretty significant. And not long thereafter, when you recommitted to Michigan, you showed up on campus. And my guess is it was a pretty significant journey back, not just regaining the weight and regaining the strength, but working off a little rust because it had been, some time since you had last played organized football, and you were trying not just to get back to where you were weight and strength wise, but also get ready to play Big Ten football as a freshman. So I'm curious, what was that process like on the way back in terms of regaining the weight and the strength, but also how long did that process take?
Yeah, great question. It was a process for sure. So like I mentioned, I came back, I was probably about 40 pounds less than what I had. I put on a little weight towards the end of my missions. Maybe I was about 30 pounds, but still, the other thing too, is just you're out of shape. Mm-hmm. Like you're still heavy, but it's not necessarily good weight, because you're not working out. Like I didn't have access to a weight bench. The heaviest thing I had were 50-pound dumbbells my entire mission. And so you can imagine I'm not doing too much lifting or anything like that. So you get back and then you have these kids who, let alone your freshman class, who've been training really hard in high school, training really hard in that summer. But then you've got kids who've been with Coach Herb for 5-6 years at that point too. And so I just came in, and I remember at first just being really overwhelmed. And, two people who just, at first, and then, just really helped me out a ton was Coach Herb and Abigail, our nutritionist, Abigail O'Connor, our nutritionist. And I remember I first got there and Coach Herb took me aside and he said, look, we're not going to rush you into playing this year. And I knew that, right? I didn't know I was going to redshirt that first year. He's like, we're not going to get you hurt. We're not just going to throw you in with everybody else. He's like, be patient and don't get frustrated were the two things he told me. And it was really tough because, believe me, it was frustrating when you go in and Coach Herb was like, all right, we're doing this for a workout. And he says, everybody except you. And then kind of takes me and he says, you're going to do half the sets because we don't want you getting hurt. And so that first summer was pretty frustrating because I was really having to build back and try to get this strength back. But Coach Herb, all credit to him. He was so good at not letting me, try to bite off more than I could chew and putting me in a bad situation of me getting hurt. It was all just development. And he never made me feel less than. No, that was the one thing I was really worried about too, was coming back and then just getting belittled by coaches for, not being able to bench 225, right? Or not being able to squat 315 or do any of those things that I could do so easily before my mission. And the whole time was just like, we're not here to break you down. We're here to build you up. And that's exactly what they did, was just build me up, build me up, build me up. And then couple that with Abigail, who still, even to this day, I text her all the time to ask her what I should and shouldn't be eating. And it was, okay, we're going to put you on a nutrition plan to get your weight back up and to put the right weight on, to do it the right way. We're not going to rush into it. We don't need you at 300 pounds tomorrow, right? So I didn't put all this bad weight on. And so that summer was just, really just grinding and laying brick by brick and starting with a foundation much lower than everybody else's. But to me, I think it just helped me so much, to the point where, by the time I got to the season, I really felt like I could compete somewhat. And I got into games as a freshman. We were able to play in some of the, I played in 3 games, which wasn't obviously anything crazy, but still redshirted that year. But it got back to the point where I could still play and hold my own. Right. Yeah. But still definitely was not myself. And I'd say really didn't feel like myself until honestly, really through probably like midway through last season even. And there are streaks, right? Like I remember fall camp of last year, I felt pretty good. But there's just things with your timing where you don't realize that taking 2 years off of football like messes it up a little bit. Or even your mentality, right? Like you guys mentioned in high school, my mentality was I'm going to finish as a run blocker, finish, and just go out and be the meanest, nastiest dude. That took some time to regrow that mentality, right? Because you go and for 2 years, your mentality is, how can I help people? Be the kindest person you can on the street. Go talk to every single person you see. That was my mentality as a missionary. Then all of a sudden you come back and it's supposed to be, all right, killer mentality, go, beat up on dudes. And that was one of the hardest things for me, was just trying to get that back. And even still, right, trying to get that back every single play. But really feel like now, especially finishing this previous spring, just a month ago, that I'm back in a spot where, that mentality has come back a lot. And obviously, not satisfied with where I'm at, but, really at a spot where I'm competing and trying to push, myself and be on the field and contribute to Michigan rather than just being kind of a role player.
You mentioned Abigail O'Connor, who leads nutrition for the football program. I think we're all really curious, what did Abigail's nutrition plan look like to get you to regain the 40 pounds and get back into playing shape once you got to Michigan?
Yeah, honestly, it was eating everything. And one thing that's awesome about Abigail, she's never going to force you to eat anything you don't want to, or force you to eat to the point where you're sick, because she always says there's no good in doing that. But it was probably 6-7 eggs for breakfast. And then trying to eat 5 to 6 meals a day of super high protein. We were a little bit higher in carbs at that point too, because I just needed to get kind of any weight that I could on. But man, it was literally everything. And when I say everything, I mean, we just go in there and she'd make me a plate, and, you get chicken, you get the bacon, you get this, and, add the veggies on there, you add rice, and just a big old plate that you'd eat. And then, go back, drink a protein shake. I was drinking the Mass Gainer protein shakes, getting back on, supplements and different things like that. And, but again, she just monitored that and was scanning my body fat composition to make sure I was putting on the right weight. And just helped me get back to a point where really, in a really, really good spot right now, where I feel that, my body's in the best shape that it's been, definitely in my life for sure.
Earlier, when you were talking about your mission, did I hear you correctly that you only had 30 minutes to work out, and that was an enforced rule? You couldn't go above the 30 minutes. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So the way a mission works is it's great. It's a great preparation for life. And I feel like I was ahead of a lot of people when I got to college because of it. But there's this very strict schedule that is laid out, and you wake up at 6:30 every morning. And then when you wake up, you have 30 minutes to exercise. You have till 7 o'clock to exercise. And then 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock is get ready and eat breakfast. 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock is reading the scriptures by yourself, so reading the Bible, reading the Book of Mormon that we did by ourselves. Then you study with your companion, because you're always in a group of 2. It's you and another person at all times. And you study with them from 9 to 10. And then 10 to 9 o'clock at night, you're supposed to be out, and you have 2 hours for lunch and dinner combined, right? So you have an hour for lunch, hour for dinner, however you split that up. And then the rest of the time you're out helping people, talking to people, doing all that. You come back at 9, you have an hour to kind of decompress a little bit, get ready for bed. Then you're in bed 10 o'clock, sleep at 10:30, and wake up and do it all again the next day. So it was a very strict schedule. So yeah, that 30 minutes was in there. That's all I had every morning from 6:30 to 7:30. I got to wake up and do my exercise. The other thing people don't realize too is we couldn't go to public gyms. We couldn't go get a gym membership. So even though I was in Utah, right, I wasn't in like Argentina where I wouldn't have had access to a public gym. There was a Vasa right down the street, but we weren't allowed to go get those memberships. So if we had apartment gyms, we could use those. And I did for a good portion of my mission when I lived in apartments. But again, those dumbbells go up to 50 pounds and you got a treadmill. And that's about all we had. So it was trying to kind of get through that and work through that. But that's all I had was my resources, 30 minutes and dumbbells, and tried to get through it that way.
Man, so a lot of people listening are going, man, I wish I needed to put on 40 pounds, because most people probably don't have that same direction in life, where they need to go with their weight, but we won't touch on that one. But so obviously you came to Michigan, you were a little underweight and your timing was off, but when you go to your first practice, and, we're not talking hazing here, but was there any kind of welcome to the Big Ten moments in practice where you're up against some upperclassmen or whatever who decided that they needed to educate you on what life was like in Michigan?
Yeah, 100%. So there's actually one experience in particular I remember. And it was actually, I'd actually been playing pretty well in practice. And so I got brought up to go with the 2s for one practice. Instead of being on scout team, I kind of got a rep with the 1s and 2s at guard. And I remember my first play at guard, if you guys remember Mozzie Smith, pretty big dude, pretty strong dude, right? First round draft pick. And so Mozzie on one play, right, had decided as a freshman, it's my first day going to 1s or 2s. I'm obviously going as hard as I possibly can. And Mozzie was good enough that he, didn't have to go as hard as he wanted to every play. And there was one play where, I kind of moved him a little bit, and I was like, wow, I'm doing really well for a freshman, right? And Coach Harbaugh has a way of motivating people. And I wasn't really thinking that Mozzie wasn't going hard. But I remember Coach Harbaugh goes, dang, Mozzie, you got moved by a freshman. And I knew exactly what Coach Harbaugh was doing.
Oh, boy.
He was just trying to inspire Mozzie a little bit, right?
And you're thinking, Coach, nope, didn't move him. Not sure what you're talking about.
Don't do that. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was like. Nope, wasn't a very good play. Didn't move him. And I barely moved him, right? Like it was like basically he didn't put me on my back, and that was a good thing, right? But anyways, the next play, Mozzie decides to go full speed, and it was a very similar play. And I just remember 1 second I was up trying to block Mozzie, and the next second I was flat on my back from a one hand straight to the chest from Mozzie Smith. And that was kind of my welcome to college football. And I realized at that point, I was like, wow, that's what it's like to mock a D lineman in a game right there. And so, got me humbled very quickly. It's not like I had much to brag on anyways before that, but very quickly humbled me back down. And that was definitely a welcome to the Big Ten moment for me.
I guess that would wake you up a little bit.
Yeah.
On the just curious, on the defensive line with the current guys, or maybe some of the guys that are gone, but during your tenure, who's been the best trash talker? There's got to be there. I'm sure there's some heated exchanges in practice. Anybody that comes to mind?
Oh man, I'm trying to think. Keyshawn Bennett, he talks a lot of trash. He's pretty good at it. I'm trying to think other guys. Yeah, I think Keyshawn, he was really good. Cam Good talked a little bit of trash too. But I mean, the thing that's awesome about it is in practice, right? I'm sure in games, different things are said, but in practice, it's all done in fun. And after, as soon as practice is done, there's no hard feelings and you're, best buddies again. But those guys are both pretty good at it. I mean, everyone is, right? You get heated, especially, once you get to spring ball and the spring games and stuff like that. You get exchanges, but I haven't had any big run-ins with anyone.
But how about the other way around? Who are some of the best trash talkers on the offensive line?
Good trash talkers on the O-line. Man, I mean, you don't hear it all the time. Trevor Keegan was really good at it. I mean, it probably doesn't surprise you too much, but Keegs was always really good at being able to talk trash. So hearing him was good. And then guys that we have now, Gio does a pretty good job at it too. Gio El Hadi, he's pretty good. So there's some good guys on there. They know how to talk trash a little bit. I'm not very good at it.
Well, last season you played some snaps at left tackle, guard, right tackle. You played a 6 lineman, in line up there. In the spring game, we saw you mostly at the right tackle, I believe. Is that where we should expect to see you this upcoming season, right tackle?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah, right tackle.
Okay.
I'll play wherever they need me to. Definitely, that's probably where I'd say I'm most comfortable is playing right tackle.
Okay.
But again, if they need me to go slide in and play guard or slide over to the other side, then just what gets me on the field.
I mean, given your pick 6 as a defensive lineman, but we have a pretty good defensive line now, so you probably won't switch over to defense, right?
I don't see that happening in the near future, but I guess you never know.
Earlier, we talked about the spring game, and now you were on the losing side of that game, the spring game.
Oh,
and I think most fans know that there is a tradition where there's a meal afterwards, and there's a different meal plan for the winners and we're not going to say lose, we're going to say non-winners. Share with us a little bit details on the after spring game meal.
Yeah, for sure. So like you mentioned, winners and losers get 2 different things. I know you said non-winners, but we were losers. We'll call it what it is. So anyways, yeah, winners, they get a steak dinner from Chop House. So it's not like it's just a steak dinner that they're cooking in the backyard themselves. It's the Chop House, right? So it's pretty high quality stuff. And then the losers get hot dogs and beans. And, they're still good, right? I mean, as an offensive lineman, I'm going to eat anything. And the hot dogs are actually high quality. They are good. And there's a lot of guys who eat hot dogs aren't allowed to go up and get steaks, but guys who get steaks are allowed to grab a hot dog on their way out. And there are plenty of guys who will go and make sure they get a hot dog because they are high quality hot dogs. And so, maybe we lost, but at the same time, getting a hot dog meal is never a loss in my opinion.
Now, are you guys? These are tables set up at Schembechler Hall, and you guys are all eating together, or do they segregate the winners and versus the losers?
No, the winners get tables set up with tablecloths and everything upstairs, and then hot dogs you just grab and go on your way out. You walk out, and they give you a box with your hot dogs.
Oh man, the walk of shame.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, your hot dog bag.
I do think it would be hilarious and take the stakes to a new level. No pun intended. If the hot dog eaters and the guys eating steaks were intermixed, and so they were sitting at the tables next to each other, feels like that would be pretty funny and also somewhat painful for the hot dog crowd.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell Abigail, see what she thinks about it.
We talked about early on, we talked about the team and the offensive line had won the Joe Moore Award several times. And, when you showed up, there were a lot of talented guys on the depth chart. How hard is it for someone, that highly recruited like yourself, highly rated, to wait until your number is called?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, just I think the word I use was frustration, coming off the mission. That's sometimes what it feels like. And not in any respect to those guys, because I love those guys. Each of those guys that's gone to the NFL and played in front of me, no disrespect to them. It's not like I'm ever frustrated with a single guy. But, you obviously want to play. You never come to a university and say, I'm coming here to sit on the bench and just be a part of a national championship team. That's not what you do, right? And so there were times where it's frustrating, right? Because you want to be on the field and you want to contribute. But at the same time, I took it as an opportunity to really learn. When you have Zach Zinter, Trevor Keegan, Drake Nugent, Olu, Ryan Hayes, I know I'm missing a bunch of guys, but when you have those guys in front of you that are all, going to play in the NFL, you learn a lot from them, right? Like you mentioned previously, Michigan has the most offensive linemen in the NFL at this time. And so, when you see that, you got to learn from those guys too, right? And that's another reason I came to Michigan. And now, again, I knew that I wasn't going to play my freshman year coming off of my mission. I just knew I wasn't going to be ready. And so I knew that I had to wait my turn. And that's something that really Coach Herb helped me with a lot, was that mentality of, you're not waiting, but you're getting better while you're waiting for your number to be called. And you're patient, you're not getting frustrated. And he helped me a lot with that, understanding, don't get frustrated with it, just wait. But while you're waiting, work really hard. And so that's something I've tried really hard to do, and is work really hard and get ready that hopefully that number gets called sooner than later and can, really contribute to helping this team go as far as we can.
Just listening to you, it seems in today's world where there's essentially free agency in college football, right, with the portal and all that, and people, it seems harder and harder for people to have that patience to wait, where they might have it seems like, hey, some other school says, hey, we got an opportunity for you right away. What kept you at Michigan? Did you feel like, hey, I see light at the end of the tunnel and I'm getting better and I'm going to be the guy this year? Or was there something else that kept you sticking around?
Yeah, it's everywhere, right? Those who stay will be champions. I know that sounds super cliche, but it's true. Number one, right, you win the national championship last year, so we actually were literally champions. But at the same time, obviously my goal is to make it to the NFL. Michigan's put more NFL offensive linemen than any other university. And so you're competing against the best every day. And so for me, right, that's what I want, is I want to compete against the best and be able to beat out the best for a chance to then be the best, right? And so, there's other universities where you could go and most likely, start right away and not have to worry about that competition. What is that really going to push you? You're not going to reach your full potential. And so for me, that's what it was, right? Is if I really want to reach my full potential, number one, I love it, right? That's the other thing too. I love the University of Michigan, getting a great degree there. I love the coaches. I love the staff. I love the players, right? So that makes it easier to stay too. But then at the same time, it's the best, right? People say it's the best university in the world, and it really is in terms of football and academics. And so being there among the best is what allows you to propel yourself to be the best. And that's eventually what I want to be. So that's where you got to do it.
The Moore Award recognizes, quote, the toughest, most physical offensive line in the country. Now, everybody wants to be tough and physical. I'm curious, is there something Michigan does to instill that mentality in its players, or is it they just select players that already have that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, right? I don't think it's just the players we select or just the things that we do. I think obviously you've seen that in the guys that they've recruited are all very tough, physical, smart players, right? That's who we want on our offensive line in particular. But then at the same time, it is preached every single day, right? You hear Coach Moore, right? People kind of laugh at it, the whole smash mentality. But that is the mentality that he instills in us, right? Is that it's smash, right? You go out and you have to be tougher. You have to be more physical. You have to be better. And then it's the drills that we do, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of the Beat Ohio drill, the Quest to Atlanta drill, things people kind of started talking about those. Those are physical drills. That if you talk to other colleges, a lot of them don't do that. And yeah, it hurts and it's physical. And you do run the risk of guys sometimes, getting a little banged up, which people want to avoid now. But if you want to be tough and play on those Saturdays and beat those teams, then you got to do things like that. And so they do a very good job. And now Coach Newsome obviously has done a fantastic job with the O-line, taking over for Coach Moore and keeping that same mentality of we're going to be the best, we're going to be the most physical, and we're going to smash. And that's what we do day after day.
You mentioned a couple of drills that, I think fans have heard about, the Beat Ohio drills and things like that. And it has been noticeable because I think we've beaten them. Dan, what is it now? 3 years in a row?
The records confirm that is indeed accurate.
Yeah. Someone can fact check that. They're still in denial, but it's real. Anyway, now one guy who voted, I saw a quote, but one guy that voted for U of M and the Joe Moore Award said, he quote, "I noticed their hands right away. That's usually a tell of a well-coached unit because it's so unnatural. In the football world, you either coach it or allow it, and it's clear what the expectation is in Ann Arbor. can you explain for the people that didn't play offensive line and aren't, what is he saying there? And what does that mean in terms of their hands and how it plays into being an offensive lineman?
Yeah, great question. So the way I've always been taught it is that as an offensive lineman, your greatest weapon that you have is your hands. And so obviously, right, you got to be big, you got to be strong, but your hands, you got to play at length. You got to keep defenders away from you. And if you want to move a guy back and you want to shock a guy, you got to have a really good strike with your hands. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there's a very specific way in which you do that, at least at Michigan, that we do that, and that the voter of the Joe Moore Award noticed. And that is tight elbows and tight hands right to the breastplate of the defensive lineman. A lot of offensive linemen, you see mistakes of getting hands wide and elbows wide. And you think about, bench pressing or any weight, I can bench press a lot more pressing this way tight than I can if I'm coming in like giving a guy a bear hug. And so if you watch offensive linemen, really good offensive linemen have super tight hands all the time and are very physical hands. There's a lot of guys who also just want to put their hands on guys and kind of get in this finesse game of, I'm just going to keep you at length and different things like that. But really good offensive linemen have very violent, very fast, and very tight hands. And that's something that's preached to us over and over again. We do drills, the way we hold the bags, everything is centered around having tight, fast, physical hands.
I did something when I think people, when they watch the end product of your result on a Saturday, they that's not something 90% of the people, probably more than that, in the stands are even noticing. So that's kind of an interesting thing to call out. And hopefully people that are listening watch a game when they watch number 75 blocking on Saturday.
That's the goal.
Season. They can watch his hands.
That's the goal. I sure hope so.
You talked about the impact of the coaches and the philosophy that they have, and certainly that had a big effect on you and the readiness to play. We also talked before about just the depth of the offensive line over the last few years and the number of guys that have come before you that are now, many of them are now in the NFL. I am curious, in addition to what has been coached through just the overall philosophy of the team and the position coaches and Sharon, were there any guys that that came before you that you really looked up to, and you either learned a skill more from watching them, or you're maybe a skill or a technique that you saw in one of those upperclassmen that you learned or emulated that was in their game that you've made a part of your own?
Yeah, a guy I really looked up to and continue to still look up to, and I'll go back and watch his film sometimes, is Ryan Hayes. I look at Ryan. He kind of had a little bit of a similar to me, right? Needed to be developed when he came in. He had switched over from tight end to tackle, so he needed to put weight on. Yeah, so he needed to put weight on and wasn't ready to play right away. So I watched him a lot because, okay, I want to see the things that he did and get to a point where he was and different things. And, kind of felt we had similar builds, right? He's a taller guy, 6'7". We weigh similar weights and different things like that. Now, Ryan's more athletic than I am. He's a freak athlete. But we had similar builds. And so I watched a lot of the things that he did, especially his feet. He had really good feet. I loved his pass set. And that was something that, you guys watched in my film. You don't see much throwing the ball in my high school film. I didn't take many pass sets. And so something I really needed to work on and still continue to need to work on is my pass set. And so that was a guy that I watched, and just how smoothly he moved his feet, how he never panicked. And if you go back and watch, Ryan Hayes' film from that senior season in 2022, he just is always very consistent. And so I looked up to him a lot in that and watched him a lot.
It's hard to believe, but the spring game's already over now, and we're heading into summer. I know you're in Colorado. What are your plans between now and when fall practice kicks back off again?
Yeah, so I'm here in Colorado for 2 more weeks, and then back in Ann Arbor beginning of June. And then from there, right, we have our summer workout plan, so we're going to be working out really hard. Coach Tress is going to be, grinding us and getting us stronger, getting us faster. And then really it's just at that point, working on the little things every day. That's what my goal is this summer, is to get really, really good at the little things, because I feel like I've kind of overcome that hump of the big things I needed to get better at right off of my mission. And now it's the little things. And if you look at the really good offensive linemen, or just really good players in general, they do the little things well and do the little things well consistently. So that's my goal this summer, is to go through the little things, the things that I struggled with in spring, and really try to turn those weaknesses into strengths and go from there and see where it takes me.
Now, do you have, a lot of the guys, it seems like they have specialized trainers or coaches in the off season, whether it's a quarterback coach. Are you going to primarily being coached by Michigan people when you come back here, or do you have another specialized coach that you go to for offensive line drills?
Yeah, so when I'm here in Colorado, there's a trainer I've worked with for years out here that I continue to go to when I'm back. Then when I'm in Michigan, it's a lot of it's just by myself and then doing what the coaches tell me to do. I haven't met anyone in Michigan yet, a specific trainer or anything like that works specifically with linemen. But we got some pretty darn good coaches that give us some good things to do.
Yeah, a couple guys that helped win the Joe Moore Award again.
Right.
So they probably know what they're doing. So yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I actually meant to ask you about Justin Tress, who is the new lead strength and conditioning now that Ben Herbert left the program. And obviously it's a tough situation for Coach Tress. He follows a little bit of a living legend in the strength and conditioning world with Ben Herbert, who was credited by many for his impact on the program and really the success over the last few years. We've heard some really good things about Coach Tress. And like I said, it is a really difficult situation because in some ways you're trying to keep the mojo working. You learned under Coach Herbert, you saw the success he had. And so part of you probably wants to emulate him and try to keep some of those things going. On the other hand, you want to be authentic. You want to be yourself and do things your way. All that said, I think what we've heard is he's balancing that really well. What would you highlight about Coach Tress?
Yeah, Coach Tress is awesome. I really love Coach Tress. He's done a great job. Like you said, that's got to be one of the hardest positions in college football is to follow Coach Herb, just because he did such a good job with us and has continued to do a great job with the Chargers. But Coach Tress, and you already hinted at it a little bit, he came in that first day and said, look, I'm not going to be Coach Herb because Coach Herb is, one of one. He said, I'm going to take a lot of the really good things I learned from Coach Herb and we're going to still do those same things, but I'm going to be Tress too. And Tress is awesome. Ever since I've gotten here, I've loved Tress. He was one of the guys who, Coach Herb obviously has to oversee an entire strength program. And so when I got back off my mission, Coach Tress worked with me a lot and had a lot of good conversations with me of helping me get to the point where I needed to. And he just grinds. I mean, I've never seen Coach Tress come in and be in a bad mood or seen Coach Tress come in and not love his job or give a half effort on anything. And so I love him. He's done a great job, kept great things from Coach Herb, installed new things of his own that are really good. I think we're going to be just as, if not better than we've been in the past. So love Coach Tress and full confidence in him for sure.
Yeah, it feels like he's got to shave his head though. I just feel like if you're going to be a strength and conditioning coach, you just got to take it all the way back, get bald, get scary.
I don't know. Not a lot of people can pull off that shaved head look. So he looked pretty. Coach Herb looked, certainly he was scary looking. Like
he looked like it, but the nicest guy when you talk to him.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know because he looked like one very intense, driven, tough guy. Like not a guy that you want to get sideways with. So
that is true. Don't get sideways. If you're on his good side, nicest guy ever. Yeah. If you're on the bad side, not a guy you want to cross.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I'm sticking with it. He's got to go bald. But look, I'll take it up with him. This will be something I'll deal with him directly on.
Yeah, and put some pit vipers on. There you go.
Shoot him an email through the umich.edu, Dan. So curious, any favorite stories about any of the coaches? Harbaugh. He's fair game now because he's gone, so you can say whatever you want.
Right.
Although he may draft you. I mean, so he still could impact you. But more anybody else? Any fun stories that you can share with the general public?
Fun stories. I mean, Josh Wallace touched on this a little bit at the Combine. And I think I was with Josh when we saw this, or we may have seen it at different times. But, one of the best stories ever is Coach Harbaugh. I'm sure as you guys know, right? He has the same outfit that he wore to every game, the blue pants, the Lululemon pants, and the Michigan polo, right? And that's what he'd wear. And sometimes there'd be a different jacket on top or whatever. But he wore that to every day at practice too. Same hat, everything. And he would also work out in that. So he'd be in his full get up, his shirt tucked in, his belt, his pants, everything. And he would work out really hard before practice still. So I remember one day, I walked in the weight room, getting ready for practice, and I see him getting his workout in. And then to get from our weight room to our practice field, you walk right by our cold tub as well. And so I saw him finish it, and then I was walking back into the weight room, and I walk in, and Coach Harbaugh in the exact same outfit, right, in his blue Lululemon pants, belt, polo, is sitting in the cold tub with his hat on, everything. And I just remember walking by, seeing it, and then having to do a double take because Coach Harbaugh was just sitting there in the cold tub. And asking me questions like, there's no clock in here. Do you know what time it is? Like asking how long he's been in. I was like, Coach, I got no idea. I'm sorry. And he's like, okay. And then just, walk by, and then he must have changed right before practice or something. But that's Coach Harbaugh for you. Intense in everything he did.
Did he take it through you guys call it the car wash, right?
Yeah, that's where he was. He was in the car wash.
Oh, he was in the car wash. Okay.
He was, yeah, in the car wash. So yeah, right there, and in that big cold pool. He was just chilling right there.
I tell you, Dan and I had a chance. We talked to him. We hosted the Empower meeting in Ann Arbor last summer, and had a chance to spend some time just one-on-one with Coach Harbaugh. And of course, we're biased, but I think when people see him on television and run off the field, like he would rather not talk to any reporter. He wants to just hand it off. I think people have a misunderstanding of him. Just such a great guy, and I think I don't begrudge the fact that he wanted to go back to the NFL. It was tough on a lot of fans, but I'm sure it was tough on you guys to see the transition. But life is filled with transitions, and someday either at the professional level, and then when you're done football, you're working for a company or whatever, there's going to be transitions. So you guys have probably learned some invaluable lessons that you don't even really know you learned until maybe later in life when you go, oh, I've been through this before. But
absolutely.
Well, I think we mentioned at the top of the podcast, you're an academic, all Big Ten honoree. So academics are clearly important to you. Walk us through. I think you mentioned, I think you're in Ross.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The Ross School of Business.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, it's great. Like I mentioned prior, Michigan's the best university in the world in terms of academics and football, in my opinion. But again, like I said, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Michigan was I wanted to push myself both football and academically, and always wanted to get into the business world once I'm done playing football. And so coming to Ross was kind of a no-brainer at that point, right? Ranked really high. And it pushes you. It does. Keeps me very busy. Tough classes, tough academics, but I love it. It's been really good for me. Met great people, met great professors. And, it's pretty cool that you can make some connections with great football players at the football field, and then you step off and you make some really good connections with some really smart people in the classroom as well. And so it's been awesome. I love it there.
Andrew, that's incredible. And obviously we're a little biased too, but we feel the same way. It is such an incredible university to be both top in academics and top in athletics. And you just don't see that. And so it's part of why we love the university so much. Within Ross, though, do you have a favorite class or a favorite subject?
Yeah, favorite class for sure is actually, it's funny because this is actually a lot of people's least favorite class in Ross, but business communications, like public speaking and presenting. Obviously, being a missionary for 2 years, did a lot of that for 2 years, but I love doing that stuff. Had a great professor in that class as well, Susan Miller, who's, all her kids went to Michigan, and she loves Michigan, but a fantastic professor in that class, and absolutely loved it.
Now, I'm guessing this also may have to do with what time of day the class is, but are you a front row student or are you a back row guy?
I like to be in the front, but I learned very quickly in high school that nobody could see over me when I was sat in the front. So I sit in the back. I do. I don't like to be in the back of the room, so I like to pay attention. So that's not why I like the back of the room, but you get more leg room back there, and you don't worry about people being able to see over you. So I prefer the back of the room for sure.
You mentioned, an interest in business. And so when your playing days are over, and obviously this answer could change over the years, that you get experience, but I'm just curious, what's in your mind these days in terms of what professional ventures you'd want to get into after football?
Yeah. So I love talking to people and getting to know people. And so actually the professor who I mentioned, Professor Miller, who I took her business communications class, I didn't even know, but there's a sales emphasis in Ross. And so you kind of learn the sales side of things and how to manage things and, sell yourself, sell a product, sell whatever it is, right? But sales is, if you look at it, really interwoven into everything you do in business. So I'm going to do a sales emphasis, and really I want to get into anything I can where I can talk to people, interact with people, whether that's inspiring people or whatever it may be. Would love to get into that. My dad's in sales. He's been, in sales his whole career and done a great job. And so it's something I've kind of just naturally gravitated towards. And obviously, as a missionary, I never like to call it selling religion because that's not what you're doing, right? You're trying to help people. But when you have to go make a door approach on somebody's random door, that's what you were doing. So I love doing that. So hopefully get into that aspect of the business world is something I'd love to do.
Man, sales is it's a hard thing. I mean, you've always got to be the most excited person in the room, even if you're not having the best day. It's hard, but Andrew, I'll be honest. What little we've gotten to talk to you, I can just tell you're going to be really, really good at it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was going to say, I see. I think this is going to be a good career track for you based on our limited time together. So, and I've been in business over 40 years, so I don't know everything, but I think you've got some good talent in that category. So keep doing that.
I appreciate that.
Today's 2-minute drill is sponsored by American Built USA. It's an American-made apparel for demanding patrons who strive to be part of something greater than themselves. As I mentioned at the start of the program, Andrew designed a shirt, and you can buy it at AmericanBuiltUSA.com. Having just honored veterans during the Memorial Day holiday, we'd love it if you help this veteran-owned business. You'll support a great company and our guest. Got a 2-minute drill to run.
Okay.
The disclaimer is these always take longer than 2 minutes because we've been very judicious with our timeouts. We haven't wasted any. And then there's going to be a TV timeout, and the clock stops, all the time. So, but anyway, so I'll kick it off. Dan and I alternate. And based on some of the stuff you've already revealed about the family history and some of your history, I think I know the answer, but you might surprise us. If you're not a football player, what sport would you be playing?
Basketball, for sure, 100%.
And I guess you're a power forward, 6'8", you can't play the 5 position, but you're playing power forward?
Yeah, I love to shoot the ball. My dad always taught me, he was a guard in college, and so he made sure that we knew how to shoot. And so I'm a huge Denver Nuggets fan, so I love watching Nikola Jokic. And so that's not that I'm saying I'm anywhere near the level of Nikola Jokic, but that would be something that I'd probably say I'd fit into that mold.
We'll call it a stretch 4. Now, you haven't called Coach Dusty May yet, have you?
I haven't yet. I mean, I might need to. Right? See if he needs a swing guy.
Well, they recently went through a pretty big roster overhaul, but I think they have at least one scholarship spot left, I believe. And then they could be 2 walk-ons. And since you're already covered by football,
might as well.
I mean, it's just I don't think Coach Moore would really like this, but we'll see. All right, Dan, over to you.
Yeah. Other than yourself, of course, who is an up-and-coming player that you think is going to have a breakout season?
Great question. I think a guy for sure is TJ Guy. Haven't seen him play too much, but had a really, really good spring. Love TJ. He's been grinding. I think he's going to have a big year this year. And then, I'm trying to think of some other guys as well. Ben Hall. I know he's been on a lot of guys' lists. Love the way he runs. Love the way he plays. Hard, hard-nosed, physical. I think he's going to have a really good year as well. And so I think Marlon Klein as well. Loved playing next to him when he would play as a tight end. Took some big strides this spring. So those are 3 guys that I would definitely say, guys that I've gone against and also played next to that I think are going to have some good years this year.
That's at least our second TJ Guy. Maybe even more. What's really cool, though, is I think that's our second Marlon Klein as well. When we talked to Zach, I believe he threw Marlon's name out as well, which is awesome. Yeah.
TJ Guy certainly has been so far a guest favorite. So we're going to have to get him on the podcast.
For sure.
Other than eating in Schembechler Hall, which, by the way, I've been there. I've seen the spread there. And then I like the little, I forget what you guys call it, but like the thing that's almost like a convenience store that's separate from the dining hall.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can go in and get grab and go stuff.
Yeah.
So, you guys are hooked up, frankly, at Schembechler. But outside of Schembechler, where's your favorite place to eat in Ann Arbor?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say the place I go the most is this place called Aloha Hawaiian Barbecue. I love Hawaiian food. And so you'll see it's off Eisenhower. Really good spot for Hawaiian food. I go there a lot. It's kind of a different one. But I also love Maize and Blue Deli. That's a classic. So I'd say those are probably 2 of my top restaurants that I go to a lot. Maize and Blue Deli and then Aloha Hawaiian Barbecue. Both great spots.
Andrew, quick favor just to ask. Do you know if they give guest passes out for the dining hall at Schembechler? I'm asking for a friend.
I haven't asked yet. Put a word in and see. We'll see what Abigail says.
That sounds good. Andrew, in this age of NIL, who would be your dream NIL sponsor if you could sign a deal with anybody? who would it be?
Honestly, I would say golf. And I love playing golf, and it's expensive. And so if I could get one where they could cover my green fees or get me new clubs or anything like that, I'd be thrilled with that.
Do you play a lot of golf?
I try to. Obviously, I can only play about 3 months out of the year, May, June, and July, with spring ball and everything else that's going on. But during that time, yes, I play a lot of golf. I actually just got fitted for some new irons right before I left for Colorado, and they just got shipped to the store. I got my call the other day. So as soon as I get back to Ann Arbor, go pick those up for Miles of Golf and get right on the UMich course. Got my pass, so go as much as I can in June and July. So we'll have to meet out there. We should be doing this up there.
So did you get fitted by Sean at Miles of Golf? Or was it the other guy?
It was I don't think it was Sean. I can't remember the name.
Okay.
To be honest, off the top of my
Miles
head.
of Golf. It's my, shout out to Miles of Golf, even though they're not paying me, but I've been fitted there several times. Love that.
They're great.
What did you end up buying? What clubs?
I bought the QI10s, the irons. Yeah. I bought a whole brand new set of irons.
The TaylorMade, right?
Yeah. TaylorMade QI10s. Yep.
I just bought a new TaylorMade driver. It's like Sean, like he said he couldn't explain it. It's one of the hottest drivers. Anyway, so if you're in the mood for a new driver too, but I know that's like $600. So
well, Cade McNamara hooked us up 2 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he had low line drivers. So I'm covered on the driver's side. Needed some irons, and now just got to go get a new putter, and then we'll be set.
Well, schedule permitting, we may. I know Davis Warren, our first guest, is a big golfer.
He's a lot better than I am.
Well,
we'll say that.
Yeah, but it's kind of a social thing. We may have to organize a little golf outing here down at Travis Point, right down from the stadium. So anyway,
would love to.
Yeah, that's Miles of Golf, small world.
And this is actually the second part of the NIL question, and it was kind of a trick question because we asked what was your dream NIL partnership. Turns out you actually already have it. You are partnered with an organization called American Built USA, which seems really, really cool. Andrew, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so great company. They're based out of Idaho. One of their part owners is a member of my church as well, so kind of heard my story a little bit and reached out. And they're all 100% American made. It's veteran owned, so the founder of the company is a veteran, and so they pride themselves on supporting veterans and also making everything American built, 100% American made. And so that's what they've done. And so they support veterans, like I said, and I was able to, kind of start working with them a little bit. They came out with a Michigan built shirt. And so that's the line that they've kind of done through me, which has been great. They've been awesome. So, check them out for sure. They're really cool.
What was the website again?
So you go to AmericanBuilt.com and then you'd see like under their collections, there's a Michigan built shirt. So yeah.
So AmericanBuilt.com, 100% American, the raw materials, everything's sourced in America. Took a quick peek at the website. Looks like a really cool thing.
Dad, you see a size schmedium on there for me?
That medium, I'm sure they got one. It's a high quality shirt. They do a good job. It's American made, right? American built.
Yeah. So, on this topic of NIL, Andrew, I mean, clearly the fans talk, it's the hottest topic, right? In college football, other than the transfer portal. I mean, as an athlete on the other side of it, I mean, how do you guys view this? Is this something you think about a lot? I know that we've hired a GM through Altius, Lear, Michigan has the Victors Exchange. There's some activity there. What's your take on this whole thing as a student athlete?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing for student athletes, first of all, right? I mean, for years, people have been profiting off of college athletes, and the athletes haven't seen it. So number one, I think it's a great thing. But number two, I think it's handled very poorly. They do a great job at Michigan. I will say that. I think we do a very good job. But you hear these stories of all these other kids of getting paid and not playing or transferring and all these different things, and there's no rules and regulation to it yet. And so I think right now it's kind of a hodgepodge, and you're just seeing, it not being handled well by the players, by the coaches, by staff members. And so I think that's the part where it really needs to improve. But again, like I said, great for athletes. I think it needs to be regulated a little bit better, though, just in terms of everything that's going on.
I think a lot of people would agree. It seems like things are headed that way, where there are going to be some rules and regulations, and maybe some revenue sharing and some base salaries and things. But it is interesting. I think a lot of these numbers are inflated by agents. You hear these deals, and some of it is probably not super accurate. And I think, some of them, people have been enticed to transfer and then show up, and then that deal kind of falls through. And I do feel like some people are being preyed upon, unfortunately. So, but it's good. I'm glad people are getting, paid. And that's one of the reasons why we set this up, so that people could, follow the rules, get paid, and also, talk about their brand. So
heading into part 16 of our NIL question, you mentioned earlier that your uncle, I think, was in one of the early NCAA games. He was unnamed strong safety number 43, obviously, because there was no NIL at that time. Question for you: Are you bringing it full circle? Are you going to be in the new NCAA game?
Yeah, I signed up for it, so should be in the new game. Which honestly, like, if I had to tell you, obviously playing in the big house, that's number one dream come true. But I mean, I'd say like number two dream come true when you're a little kid and you play those games and you create yourself as a player. Not just to be in the game is honestly going to be like one of the most surreal, cool experiences of my life for sure. So super hyped for that.
That's awesome. I assume that's kind of an NIL related deal. They're using your name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, they're paying us for it. So
Good.
They're going to pay us a little bit and a free copy of the game, which honestly I'm more hype about. So
are you? So we've heard that. I think Max Bredesen is a great Madden player.
I've seen that. He is pretty good.
How are you as a gamer?
Not great. Not very good. I had a gaming system, like I said, growing up. I'm okay at like Madden and 2K. Didn't really play much of the shooter games or anything like that growing up. Gotcha. But I'm okay at Madden and 2K. I can hold my own at those games. But not a competitive player by any stretch of the imagination like Max would be, or we got a couple other guys on our team that are pretty good at some other games too.
I'm an old guy. I don't play video games. I tried some of those games and I get lost. Like, those 2-shooter games, I'd be pointing the gun up at the ceiling. I'd be walking into walls. I had no idea where I was. It's not, but anyway. Okay. So, if you appeared on American Got Talent, what is the talent that maybe we're not aware of as fans that you have?
I can juggle. That is one thing I can do.
You can juggle.
Probably not a great thing on America's Got Talent, but
well, that depends on what you're juggling.
That is true. For me, it wouldn't be anything super cool. I'm not like a professional juggler by any sense of the imagination, but if football doesn't work out, you never know where a path could take you. But other than that, not a whole ton of talents. I can speak Spanish. On my mission, I was obviously, like I said, assigned to Argentina. And then when I got reassigned to Utah, I was still working with the Hispanic community in Utah. And so I had to learn how to speak Spanish. And so I can speak Spanish a little bit. It's a little bit rusty now, but I can do that too.
This isn't officially my next question. Well, I guess it is. But I've been dying to ask, and I hope you know the answer, but what happens at the top part of Utah? Like that little nub that sits up at the top in the upper left-hand corner. I'm not sure it's real. So any idea what's going on up there?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know everything. I do know, very northern Utah, Logan, Utah, Cache Valley. My dad went to school at Utah State. And so I've been there. I got family who's lived up there. Very pretty place. I will say that. The border between Utah and Idaho, right there, if you look up Cache Valley. Have you ever seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite? So Napoleon Dynamite is filmed in Cache Valley on the Idaho side, but right there close to the border. It's about 20 minutes from Utah. So that's kind of what you see. It's really pretty. I really like Cache Valley, Utah.
All right. That was pretty convincing. Be honest, I'm still not totally sure it's real, but you made some good points.
Yeah, look up Bear Lake and Cache Valley. Those two places right there.
Next question is, we saw one of those U of M social media posts where they were filming guys walking off the field and asking them what their favorite sports movie was. What's your favorite sports movie?
Oh, man, great question. I would say my favorite sports movies, probably Remember the Titans. Obviously, super classic one right there. Remember the Titans or The Blind Side's another great one as well. Love those two movies.
Yeah, both. I mean, at least The Blind Side, true story, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they took little liberties with certain details, but I mean, it's of course it's an offensive lineman too, so it doesn't surprise me that it's one of your favorites.
Yeah.
So, favorite place you visited?
Man, I haven't been to many places, to be honest with you. I've only left the country one time, and that was to drive to Canada for 5 minutes. But I actually. I love going to Southern California. We would go there as a family growing up and stuff like that. And so we'd make trips to Disneyland. So I love doing that as a kid. And Southern California is a great place to visit. But I love Utah too. I mean, got to give a shout out to when I served my mission in Utah. Wasn't quite like Argentina, but still a great spot.
Yeah. All right. Last question, Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I know. I've got two. Let me give you the foxhole one, and I'll ask a question that, frankly, it might be the most important question we have in this interview. We left it behind in a prior section, so I'm going to bring it back. But Andrew, this is very spring game relevant. One team, winners eat steaks, losers eat hot dogs. We covered all that. But pressing question, $1 million question of the day, maybe the year, is a hot dog a sandwich?
I'm not going to classify a hot dog as a sandwich. I don't think it should be. I don't have a lot of proof or evidence maybe to back it up, but my argument would be, sandwich, in my opinion, when I eat a sandwich, I'm thinking of a piece of bread completely sliced in half. I'm not eating a hot dog. The hot dog bun has a little opening in it. And also, I think there is a difference between like a hot dog bun and an actual piece of bread. And I also can't really fit much else inside a hot dog either. I'm thinking like a sandwich, obviously it's a bigger guy. I'm thinking like if I want like a double meat sandwich, can't really do that with a hot dog. Or like, you want to throw your veggies on there, different things like that. You're not really doing that with a hot dog. So I think a hot dog is its own category. Yeah. Like, it doesn't really fall under anything. You got a hot dog, you got sandwiches, but they're not the same thing.
See, I'm with you because like Jersey Mike's is my favorite sub shop. They have great sandwiches. They sell a lot of different types of sandwiches, that you put in there. And if you've never tried Jersey Mike's, everyone should try it. They don't sell hot dogs, and they're like one of the best sandwich places in North America. So they don't sell them. So I look at it as hot dog is not a sandwich, but I know it's a very controversial topic online. People can look it up. People, families have fought over this. It's terrible.
There we go.
Perfect. Well, last question. We heard it coined. I don't know if it's like an official phrase among the team, but they talked about foxhole guys, people that you want to kind of be around when things are getting a little sideways or out of control, or just in life or in football. Who's the guy that, or maybe there's multiple people that you want to be around in that situation?
Man, that's a good question. There's a couple of guys. Let's see. One guy that I'm really close with, Jeff Percy. He's always been a good guy that I would definitely lean on for sure. He'd be a foxhole guy for sure in my book. Who are some other guys that would be good foxhole guys? That's a great question. Greg Crippen, he's my roommate. He's a good one as well. I'm just naming offensive line guys, but I'd be in a foxhole with Cripp as well. He's always there for support and whatnot. And then, I'd honestly say Davis Warren too. You guys know Davis well. Davis is such a positive guy, such a good dude, and would do anything for anyone on the team. So I would throw him in there as well.
That's interesting range. I mean, Percy's been around the program, like he's one of the oldest guys on the team by now.
Yeah, for sure.
Given COVID and the extra year and things like that. And we're going to have Crippen on one of our future episodes.
Nice.
So we're looking forward to hearing his story. And then, Davis, we've talked to his podcast is out there. His story of perseverance and getting to Michigan is unreal. So I can see a lot of different attributes that make those folks the kind of guys that you want to be around. But well, Andrew, this has been awesome. I mean, it's been great having you share your background. It's and your story of how you got to Michigan, and all these roads. There's some bumps in them, but you got to the right place. And so, best of luck to you being the next great tackle coming out of Michigan and making it to the NFL and telling your story down the road. Again, appreciate your time tonight. We hope everyone's going to follow us on social media. Again, you can visit our website, leadersandnext.com, and information on how you can further support Michigan athletics. And again, appreciate everyone's listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.